Hey buddy, how you doing?
Hi, Nash.
How you doing, mate? You well?
As well as can be expected, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you getting on during the whole Corona pandemic?
I guess same as everyone else, just day at a time and doing our best. Ups and downs. Some
Yeah.
days are better than others. Some days it's really difficult. Some days everything flows. Yeah, it's tough. It's different.
I mean, just like, not that this is what we're here to talk about, but how do you stay motivated, stay on track, stay on course? What do you do in particular?
It's tough. I find that I need to have routine. If I go out of the routine, things can fall apart very easily. So I'm still experimenting to see what is the best routine, but early to bed, early mornings, yoga in the morning, meditation, some kind of exercise, then a good breakfast, and then a clear plan of what I want to achieve, broken down into power blocks. A friend of mine introduced me to this concept where you sit down, you write down the three things you're going to achieve, you turn your phone off and you just focus on achieving that, and then at the end of the hour, you review, you move on, you choose something else, you take a break, 15 minutes, and then move on to another power block. So that's quite a useful way of doing things because it means that you're not distracted, you're just focused for that hour of good quality time. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that's really important, I think, is routine. You know, when you've got this much time to think, it can be a problem, I find, with my head. It's very easy to get dragged into negativity and just because we're so sedentary as well and we're so stuck at home that it's easy to just think, you just, don't really have to do anything. I can just be lazy for a bit. It's dangerous.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? It's you had a kind of healthy balance that exists in your normal life. Something whacks you from the side, and like, how do you actually continue in the same way? And I think a lot of people probably try and do the wrong thing, which is they try and continue normality, and it's like there isn't really a normality at the moment. What do I do? Started by getting very upset with myself that I wasn't getting everything I wanted to do done every day because I was doing exactly what you said, which was kind of taking the time in the morning that maybe I never had to actually start properly, rather than think, oh, I'm working from 9 to 6 or whatever it is, and that's the time I can do business. I've thrown that out the window. So by doing that, I kind of can forgive myself for maybe taking a bit longer in the morning, but it's a better process. I think the biggest thing I want to start doing is something I kind of do already, but I haven't formalized it enough, and that's just setting my planning routine in motion, which needs to align with my kind of yearly, monthly, weekly, and obviously bring it onto a daily basis. And I think I told you I put together this visual planning method which suits me, and I think, for my brain, the way it works, it's perfect. And if I can get to do that every day, I kind of feel like I'll be in control. And that will probably allow me to tick off everything I want to do. But everyone's always in a rush to get stuff done. So, all right. Well, look, for people that don't know, and let's put a little format to it, because otherwise it's just you and me chatting stuff all day. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. So my name's Luke Steele, and I am a teacher of English and drama. Before that, I was an actor and director. And before that, I was a photographer and a merchant banker. So I've had quite a varied career path, not through choice, just through not really knowing what I wanted to do. So I thought, I'll try this, I'll try that. And again, it wasn't a conscious, it wasn't that at the beginning I thought I'll try out all these things. I went down the path that I thought was right for me at the time and found out that it wasn't right for me. It's funny because people always say, oh, you've done so much, but to me it feels like I haven't done enough because I still haven't hit the nail on the head yet. But yeah, that's where I am now. So when I started teaching, I realized there's still quite a few considerable problems in the education system. So I started this Education 2.0, which is a complete rethink of the education system. And that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay. Well, can you go into a bit more detail and give us like a bit of an overview over what it is or how it came about?
I'd love to. So Ed 2.0 is a revolutionary approach to education. Ken Robinson said it best, that what we need in education is not evolution, but revolution, because we're using a system that was designed to meet the needs of society 100, 150 years ago. And the Victorians, it's an amazing system. It really does do what it's supposed to do. It creates people with identical skills and gives them the mentality that they need to work in factories or offices or the jobs that were required to be filled at the time. So that's all well and good. As we know, the economy and industry has evolved so much. Education hasn't quite kept up. It's done its best to keep up, but policy is made by politicians, and they're not in the schools. They're not in the classrooms. They've made good-hearted changes that they think are the right thing to do, but they haven't had the effect that we need, which is we drastically need people to come out of school with the right skills, with the ability to live life in the modern age, 21st century. And the Victorian system wasn't set up to do that. It does very well what it was set up to do, but it doesn't meet the needs of school leavers today. And there is consensus that is the case. This is not an outspoken view. If you speak to anyone who has worked in education, some people will say that, and I do agree, the system's good. It does a job, but we need to be doing much better. And the world is changing so quickly that unless we're preparing our children for an ever-changing world, we're going to be left behind, because there is a lot of innovation, but at the moment, the system doesn't do a good enough job. Too many kids are left behind and not catered for. And we all know there's so many new conditions, and neurology is telling us so much about the brain all the time, neuroscience, and we're learning a lot about how we learn, and we need to change our systems accordingly. So Ed 2.0 is a multi-academy trust that is designed to open schools in areas that have socioeconomic problems, that have low attainment historically, and it's a state school, and it's supplemented by private funding so that new buildings are built, state-of-the-art facilities to provide children with the education they need and deserve. That's the long and the short of it. That's what's going on.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, so you're saying that the system's outdated, basically.
There's wide agreement that the system is not fit for purpose any longer, and it's on its last legs. It's tough to find people that will disagree with that.
No, I think if I ask myself the question, what subjects or what did I learn at school that I used outside, it's very little. I actually think probably the thing I learned most that I use was the stuff I learned playing in teams, in sports. Maths and English, 100%, that comes into my job daily. But nothing like geography. Science has some bearing, but yeah, there's no actual application of the subjects which I learned, got a qualification in of some sort, a GCSE, an exam. And then there was a complete disconnect with everything you were asked to do afterwards. And in fact, if you remember, we all did it at school. We had those career little what's it called, questionnaires that you filled out. Was it UCAS? And you got a report back saying what you were. And even that was completely, for most people, separate from what you've been learning at school.
And it's also extremely damaging for a lot of children to be told you're not fit for this, but you can do this, because you're a very strong-willed and single-minded individual, but a lot of people lack the conviction of their own beliefs, and understandably, so a lot of people had their whole futures dashed in through that experience. And yes, you're quite right, we went to school in the 80s and 90s, and already by then we could see, I remember thinking very, very clearly, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Surely at some point they're going to sit us down and say, okay, this is how you adult. This is what you need to do. This is what a mortgage is. This is how you pay tax. This is how to figure out what to do in life. This is how you nurture your individual unique talents and skills and figure out how you're going to contribute to the world using them. Never happened. And I just accepted it because everybody else accepted it. But it turns out that the sneaking suspicion I had that this wasn't all quite right, was actually accurate.
So that's great. I mean, look, if we're talking that currently it doesn't connect us to the actual roles and jobs and opportunities that are there, that are going to be there with the change of technology, cool. What are you saying we should be teaching generally to actually be ready for those roles?
The general consensus is, and I haven't created anything here, what I've done is I've looked during my time working in schools and in education myself, and I've noticed that there are some shortcomings, and I've spoken to a lot of children in school today, and they're just as angry as I was at the fact that school is not preparing them for life after school. It's very strange. They can't understand it. They're really angry, and I think in consultation with the experts, I've read widely and discussed it with a lot of people, but one key thing that's missing is oracy. So we teach literacy and we teach numeracy, but people have to learn how to communicate, and that's one of the soft skills that's really missing. So generally what I'm talking about is the soft skills, but the main thing that's actually missing is education of the whole person, because we're just into the academic side of things now, but we know now that the emotional and the spiritual side, is so important. And by spiritual, I mean, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What's your dream? What's your vision? And are you connected to that? And what is it you want to do to your life? And how are you going to contribute to the world and make it a better place? What drives you? So that really needs to be a part of education now, because we want people that are going to contribute to society to solve the many problems that we have. So that's one side of things, not just the mental, the academic side, but the emotional, the social, cultural education that has always been kind of hidden or implied, but we need to make it explicit. Also, we need to learn important life skills, relationship building, job interview skills, health and nutrition, first aid, time management, decision making, so many things that you could be taught to make your life so much more effective. Not least to mention financial responsibility and management. I think those are the key things. But yeah, there's a lot of literature out there. It generally focuses on soft skills like resourcefulness, perseverance, problem solving, cognitive thinking, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So do you have a current, in your own mind, syllabus already in place, or is it something that needs to be developed and put together on the basis of this kind of ethos?
So there is a curriculum that I'm developing, but it's not just the curriculum. We need a new pedagogy as well, which is the science of teaching, the application of teaching, the method of teaching. So I say we have to move away from having a content holder at the top of the room and then kids sitting in rows quietly taking that information in, because it's really hard to get kids in school now to sit down and take that information in, because they don't. It's very difficult to engage them because they have more information than you and they have their smartphones in their pockets. And what we need to do is find a new way of engaging them and find I heard a great quote from a speaker. I was on yesterday and the day before. I was doing an education seminar with Wise Education and Salzburg Global, and one of the speakers said, we need to move from do this because I tell you to or else, to what do you need to learn, how can I help you achieve it? And it needs to become more of a service rather than an instructional kind of thing. So the whole pedagogy needs to change, the curriculum, but most importantly as well, the method of assessment. At the moment we're just teaching to the test, and even if we're not teaching to the test, these exams are so important and they create so much anxiety in young people, from primary school. And we've got children in year 4 learning fronted adverbials and, just crazy things that they don't need to learn at that age. And
how much control out of interest?
The whole thing needs restructure.
So how much control out of interest are you looking to give to the student? Because while I hear you and it sounds great to kind of make it more interactive and consensual, surely a lot of kids will just be not necessarily the best people to determine what they need to know.
Absolutely. You can't have zero structure. So what's really important is boundaries, limitations, and structure. And you can see kids need it. Not only do they need it, but they thrive on it. You've got to have discipline, but it's got to be a balance. You can't treat them anymore the way we treated Victorian children, sit down in rows and speak only when spoken to, because they're more woke, right? They're just, it just doesn't work anymore. So yes, the school will have very clear structures, very clear responsibility for who does what, when, where, and why, and how. But each child is catered to, because each child has to develop their own unique skills and abilities, but in a very structured way. There's no, there are schools that have self-directed learning, and you know, they're very democratic as well. So there's a school called Summerhill where the children have optional, lessons are optional, that no lesson is compulsory. We're not going that far, because children need the structure, but yeah.
Yeah, that might not be the best idea.
It actually does work in Summerhill, because they go to the lessons anyway, because it's their peers that hold them accountable. So if they don't go to a lesson, then the teacher has to spend more time getting them up to speed, and then the others fail because of it. So they generally do go to the lessons because they don't want to make their
I've got no doubt that the more faith you have in the youth, the more they will actually surprise you and show you they're wrong. And I think it's just, that's a natural thing to think. At the same time, knowing kind of, you know, what I know from high performance training and all that sort of thing, you know, a structure is clearly what's needed. Definitely that has to be variant and variable to the person you're dealing with. And there has to be a hell of a lot of consensual respect, I think, on both sides. You know, when I look at training environments that have created magnificent successes, champions, whatever you want to call it, it's normally been because there's a huge amount of respect that goes both ways between the coach and the athlete. And both you have to kind of give and take. And I think that's probably a great example. I think what you're talking about, a lot of stuff you're talking about, makes a huge amount of sense. And I was thinking just of the nature of a classroom, from a spatial thing, the idea that you do go into it, you're at the front and then there's rows of people. But what about the people at the back? You know, and I know you have teaching assistants to be able to do that, but if I was thinking about teaching people, I'd almost think, well, is there a way for me to do it when there's everyone around me, so they can have equal position?
Could you teach in a circle with the teacher and around the circle? Yeah, that's one way to do it. Or maybe you don't even need to have, maybe you just need to have, some schools have bean bags and cushions and kids just scattered around sitting, doing activities, depending on the lesson. But the thing is, ed tech is changing everything, educational technology. So, you know, I know you're a huge fan of VR, and that's going to be huge. Can you imagine learning history where you put the headset on and you're sitting down and you're in the Battle of Britain, you know, you're a Spitfire pilot and you're looking around and you know you're in that moment. And you know, I've tried them out where there's unbelievable experiences that you can get with Transformers.
It's absolutely right. And there was, you know, it's not too necessarily far from what you would be trying to do anyway, which was reading a piece of prose and then doing comprehension and then rewording it. And yeah, but the idea that you could make the experience so much more tangible to a wide variety of people, because I think a lot of people will read books and their imagination will flare up, and there's a huge portion of people who will read books and it doesn't have quite the same stimulus as something visual. And I think that, you know, we live in a little bit of an age of a post-Victorian style, and you're right, it's all because of industry that was put in place to make us live. So there were vocations that you went for and qualifications that you got, and that just fed itself in, and the system's changed, but the system of education hasn't. Was there anything that happened in particular to you during your experiences that really emphasized why this was such an important thing, or it's made you change your way of thought from what you were thinking to this?
Yeah, it's a question. I think that the most obvious thing was that I was in school and I remember very clearly a burning sense of injustice, that this is not right, this is not fair, that I'm not being given the tools I will need to succeed. Like, nobody's teaching me adulting, nobody's teaching me, you know, any of that stuff that I listed before. And I I remember being at school thinking, I'm going to change this because this is just so wrong. There's just so much waste here. But then you grow up, you become an adult, and you have to fight your own fights, and you have to, yeah. So I sort of got lost on my own path, and I've only come back to it, in the last 5 years. Even though I've always been interested in education, and I've been involved in education for 11 years out of the last 20. And it's always been close to me, but it was funny because I was talking to one of the kids in my current school, and he said to me, why do we learn this stuff? And he was angry, and it was exactly like looking at myself from the past. And I thought, I have to do something then, because if he feels how I felt and nothing's changed, I think it's my duty to try and change it so that other people don't have to go through this. But the main reason why I want to do this is because I look around the world and I see there's a huge amount of suffering. And I think that a great deal of that suffering is unnecessary and can be avoided if people knew better how to think and how to use their minds. Because I always say that the mind is, the brain is an amazingly powerful thing, and it's not user friendly, and it doesn't come with an instruction manual. And I believe that if people were taught how to deal with negative emotions and successes and failures and just the right attitudes to have in life, that I think a lot of problems and suffering could be avoided that way. If people were taught how to deal with relationships, not just with a partner, but with friends and business partners and just people, society at large, I think people should learn that contribution is a really good thing. And I just think that a lot of suffering could be eliminated if people were more aptly prepared for the world.
Yeah, 100%. Now, amen to that. I think that's great. So if we moving on, if we want to convince people that this is a valid thing, I always find statistics and numbers a really powerful way for setting in motion. I'm sure you've got a few you want to share.
Yes, well, the startling statistics that I always share is that 88% of employers feel that school leavers are not adequately prepared for the workforce. That's from the British Chamber of Commerce. They say that 88% of workers are not adequately prepared. In America, that goes up to 92% in the USA. And the last study, that was around 5 years ago, but I doubt it's changed much. But you can't, it's undeniable, and we can see it, everyone can see it. And that's why this conversation on this seminar I was on, and in all the other educational events and seminars I've been to, nobody disagrees that things have to change. Everybody says, yes, we need to innovate, we need to change it, but nobody knows how, because it's political will, and no government has the will to completely overhaul education. It's too frightening, it's too much money, and why should they be the ones to do it? They've got other focus, and So one of the statistics is that 88% of employers believe that school leavers are not prepared for the workforce, and another one is that only 1/3 of millennials feel they have the knowledge to thrive. So only 30% roughly of people coming out of school feel that they're ready for adult life, and I'm one of those 2/3 that felt they weren't ready. No one asked us in the 80s or the 90s because we haven't got there yet. But now, so that's essentially, those two facts say it all, I think. Those two statistics just say everything.
Yeah, I was reading a similar statistic. I mean, it was more to do with satisfaction in the workplace. 35% of people feel dissatisfied in the workplace, and another 35% feel they'd be more engaged if their managers took a more active interest in their personal lives and things like that. And, these sorts of, how can I say, examples of bad management, bad application of communication, people skills, which you see, to use the word endemic, but prolific throughout companies, relationships, people, all of those things. It's the ground that we occupy to come in and fix things, whether it's a business or a person. It's just a blockage. But a lot of this stuff is caused because of the fundamental way we learn and we go about things. And I think that then just filters into life and becomes a bit of a problem, really, doesn't it?
There's so many statistics like that. I could reel them off. There's so many statistics that just point to how wrong, how much we're failing the younger generation. And we can understand because, you know, I felt failed, and I've spoken to many other people that feel that, yeah, we weren't quite taught as much or everything we needed to learn. GCSEs, when students get to GCSEs now, students from the most deprived parts of England are 2 years behind their peers when they get to the end of GCSEs. 2 years, so almost 2 years, 24 months. There's a disadvantage gap, it's called. And when children from disadvantaged backgrounds start school, they grow at a much slower rate than advantaged children, for obvious reasons. And by the time it gets to GCSEs, they're 2 whole years behind, 24 months behind. So, you know, you just think of the number of children that is, and what their experience is, and where we're heading if we don't change that.
So where are you overall with your vision and putting it into reality?
So in the application stage of what's called a free school application. So we are applying. So the Department for Education have since 2010, there's been a new type of school called a free school, which is basically an academy, but in law it's an academy, but it's set up as a free school. So it has slightly different rules. It has doesn't have to teach the national curriculum. It doesn't have to hire even qualified teachers if you don't want to. You can pay your teachers and change your term dates. So there's a lot more flexibility. And some of the most innovative schools in England, and actually the most successful schools in England now, are free schools. So we are applying, and we're working with a charity called the New Schools Network, which is set up and funded by the department to help set up free schools, to help improve the chances of your application being approved. The school should be open in September 2023. So the first class should graduate summer 2030. So at the moment, it's this application stage, then we would move into pre-opening. So yeah, that's where we are now. Had very positive feedback from our conversations with the NSN, which has been very encouraging.
And what do you, I mean, look, you get the application through, you get the funding, it happens? Is it as simple as that?
No, it's never as simple as that when you're dealing with, the thing is, this is a public-private partnership, so it's never really been done before. There are multi-academy trusts that have lots of schools that get funding from philanthropists and donors that enable them to build new buildings, but this is an approach that we're trying to model as a sustainable model for moving forward in education. So it's we believe that the education, although is an obligation of the state, shouldn't necessarily be completely handled by the state. And also it's a huge, it's a huge expense. And I think that the private sector has a lot to offer. And I think that not only financially, but in many other ways they can be involved, as long as obviously there's no profit motivation or any sort of favoritism or anything from corporations. I think there's a lot they can offer. So what happens is you do your application, and in the application you have to prove that your school is going to be innovative and going to provide solutions for children whose needs are currently unmet. So there has to be a need for school places, and there has to be low attainment in the area that you want to open in. Now, we're not sure what the new application criteria are, because after the election in December 19, the department, well, obviously it's a Tory policy, so they decided to continue it, and they're going to be announcing their new criteria for maybe you'll only have to maybe you won't have to meet both you won't have to meet both criteria of being in a place of low attainment and where there's an urgent need for school places. Maybe it'll be one or the other. We're not sure yet what the exact criteria are, but what happens is you do an application, you prove that you have a good team with good experience of running state schools and succeeding in state schools and achieving things. You prove that you have innovation and a good team, then you never know. You may not get approved even in those circumstances. Some people don't. There have been lots of good applications that haven't been approved, but that's why we're working with the New School Network to increase our chances. I think it's something like 90% of cases with the NSN get approved. I'm not sure about that. I may be being too optimistic, but...
So does that mean you're looking for a response from the essentially public sector to confirm your application, but you're also having to then go out and secure funding from the private sector, is that right?
We choose to go down that path, yeah. We choose to go down the path. So you don't have to get any private funding. The state will fund everything. But there's been problems because there's been examples of amazing applications being approved. The department say, yes, we approve, off you go. They put you in touch with the Education Skills Funding Agency, and they struggle to find you premises or a building, and many schools have ended up in temporary accommodation, which has become permanent, an old office block or porter cabins or whatever the council can find.
You've got to wear a lot of hats then, really, in what you do, because you're looking not just to go out and get funding from the public sector, you're going to the private sector as well. And clearly what you're going to present to the public sector is not what you're presenting to the private sector. And the reality is, the reality, you are just going to be doing something which sits in that space. You've got to satisfy both sets of people, so that's quite a challenge.
It is a challenge. It's a massive challenge, and it's new. It's not been done before, and that's what's exciting about it, is that it's actually from the ground up a revolutionary approach to education, giving children what they need in an amazing environment, and it's collaboration between state and private. And I think the burden is too much for state these days because there's a lot to think about, but the department. The department need to have they need to be satisfied that we are going to add value, and then the people, the private donors, and I think I'm very fortunate because I have a background in finance, and I understand what they want as well. So I think that I'm quite well positioned to be able to provide both. But yes, you are straddling the two, and it is very, very different what you need to tell both of them. Even though it is one thing, as you say, the reality, you have to come at it from two different points of view. So it's what you see, I'm in sales as well, right? I mean, I'm selling it to the state, and I'm selling it to private. I'm selling myself all the time.
You're stealing my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say. This is just another sale. It's a very important sale, but that's exactly right. And so my question is how do you appeal to the public sector? I think I can understand, but how are you going to appeal to the private sector to get this? And what do you need from the private sector?
Okay. Question. So you're not allowed to make money from education in England. It's in the UK. You can in some countries, but in the UK, you're not allowed to make money. Even though there are companies like the exam boards that make a lot of money, because for every child that sits in a GCSE or an A level, the school has to pay, and they make money. So they're not making money from education directly. So it's, what I have to do is satisfy the state that we are going to be delivering a world-class education for every child, and that's handled. That's not a problem. The team that I'm building will have more than enough expertise to satisfy that. And really, it's only because what I'm saying is what everybody's been saying for a long time, but now we're actually doing it because we have this free school avenue, and with my experience in finance, I can bring in private equity to help with that. So we're in state-of-the-art facilities. Now, the private sector, only a few people are going to want to be involved because there is no financial gain. There is no financial gain. It's for people that have made money and that want to contribute to society and make it better. And down the line, there may be avenues. We'll have to see what policy changes come, if any. But I think it's good that you can't make education. You can't make money from education, because I think there are arguments for capitalizing it, you know, and nationalizing it. But I think that we're not there yet as a society. I don't think we're responsible enough for that, and I think it's good that the state keep profiteering away from it. But listen, there's no profit motivation for education, so it's people that have made money and that want to make a difference and see that this is a good way of doing it.
I don't think you'll have any shortage of people wanting to get involved. You know, what you're talking about is changing the world. And people, when they've made money or made profits in companies, that's exactly what they want to do. You look at companies like Coca-Cola and the way they invest in infrastructure, development, even individuals like Oprah Winfrey. And, you know, this is what people do with their money because they understand the importance of giving something back. These are great people, great organizations. You've got a long way to go. It's a massive climb, clearly, and you know, you've got your target on 3 years away of opening the school. A lot's going to have to happen. But what do the next 12 months for you look like? Because that's, you know, I mean, you can plan as much as you want, but in reality, I think firm plans, firm milestones can only really be given over a 12-month period. What does yours look like?
So I'm working hard on the application for the next 12 months because it's incredibly detailed, and I'm building a team of people who have expertise in opening schools and running schools, state schools, successfully, hopefully in areas of socioeconomic problems and hardship and low attainment. So I'm putting the team together to make the application as solid as it can be, and by the end of the next 12 months, the application would have been submitted and approved. Hopefully, fingers crossed, all being well, if we can satisfy the department. After that, it's the site. We have to find a site, and we have, depending on the local education authority, the council that we build in, we have to find, you know, the site, and then we have to build a state-of-the-art building with, you know, all the latest tech built in. It's got a sustainability garden so that food is grown on site and children learn how to grow stuff and they work in the gardens. And, you know, these forest schools have become very successful. There's so many aspects to it, so many moving parts. We've got it's renewable energy, so we've got solar panels. We've got, we've got, you'll like this, we've got a gym that's powered by the machines. So you use the gym, and the gym is powered by the energy created by people cycling or using these treadmills that can plug into the. It's great. It's great. So yeah, there's so many moving parts, and finances is a big part of it, and putting the pedagogy, the curriculum, the assessment, and the learning environment together is just, it's non-stop really, because if I, stop working on one, there's a whole list of many other things I can do on the other side.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll always be there to help in any way I can. And I think the most important thing is just getting every single moment of every day maximized. But that's the struggle we deal with every single day, isn't it? It's getting another inch or yard out of the day. So what I was going to ask you was, this is all great and plans are proceeding, things are flying along, and then bang, coronavirus comes and slaps you in the face. What are you saying? How are you going forward now? What's the plan? Has it affected it? How do you, and how does coronavirus and the future of this society and where we live, how is that affecting your vision as well?
What's amazing is that parents are really starting to realize the value of teachers more, I think, because there's been a sort of diminishment of teachers and the role they play. And then, teachers, you got it hard, but come on, you get like 4 months holiday a year or you finish work at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and, so.
That's the general point of view, 100%.
That's the general perception of teachers, right?
That's easy life, man. Anyone can do it.
Exactly. But I think that Corona has really helped reshape people's perceptions. A lot of people with children are struggling, and what's been amazing is that people like the BBC and Natural History Museum, even big corporations, they've all got together to create educational material. And it's great distance learning, but there's a lot of schools that are not ready for distance learning. Google Classroom has really helped. Apple are also big into education. Lots of companies are into education. Discovery Channel, they're doing some amazing stuff. But what's clear is that you need to have a building for your children to go to. You can't homeschool every child, and you need the social aspect. So yes, Corona has, I think, been actually a really positive thing for education, because I think people are starting to realize how much things need to change and how important a job teachers are doing and how undervalued they are. So it's a problem. Of course it's a problem, because people aren't going to work, things aren't getting done. The Department for Education is like every other institution, is struggling to get things done. But I'm a huge believer that there's so much opportunity in times of hardship and in times of recession, that's when the best opportunities come. And a lot of what's called EdChat has gone online now, and people are doing, there's a lot more access now to educational conferences and ideas, and people are coming together to really try and make solutions here. And the conversation I've seen is that it's becoming more serious now. Seriously, we have to change. I
don't agree with you. I mean, for me, change happens because of necessity. There's a necessity to change, but only good stuff tends to come from change. That's the truth, because everything needs to flow in a certain direction. So when change happens, things will get better, hopefully. I mean, that's why I've always said change is a good thing. But, I think I've got an idea. Put my hand up. I've got an idea that I think you need to consider, which is, say again? Do I have to? I'm at the back of the black hair, yeah. So me at the back. I think I should press a button firstly. I don't think I should be sticking my hand up, because that's prejudicing me somehow. But so I pressed my button. You said.
There's a button on Zoom you can press.
There you go. There's my Zoom button. You say you and me in the Zoom call. So I think you should put. Let me preface it. A lot of companies that we've seen do massively well over the years are the companies that have embraced environments which are very dynamic. When I say dynamic, I don't necessarily mean high paced and fast, but actually more integrated into a welcoming space, a home-like environment, a home away from home. Companies that I've worked with in the past have offered their employees 3 meals a day, and that's had a knock-on effect to productivity to the extent people then spend longer in their workplace, because they see it not just as work, but work and play place, and people work great when they play as well. So with that in mind, and with the idea of virtual reality technology, I think you've got some application to be able to allow the student to continue learning once they leave the classroom as well with this VR headset. And I think as that develops, that might be something we could talk about. It sounds good.
Yeah,
but
absolutely, we'll
We'll talk about that. Okay, that I want 10%. But what I will say is this, right? There are what you're talking about is obviously in tune with what I believe because of what I do, but not just me, with so many people out there who educate, who self-develop, who provide those resources to everyone. We all believe in the same thing. So that's why when you're talking about this, it's great that the education world recognize it. It's great that parents are starting to recognize it. But all of us in this community, we've recognized it a long time. So I don't think there's anyone who will ever say in this space, no, that's a bad idea. It's a fantastic idea. It can change the world. It could be we don't want to talk about institutions too much, but it could be the institution that changes the world. Because at the moment, all of us are running around with our own beliefs and thoughts and trying to powerfully do it as individuals. But when an institution can take that on, that can be huge. So I definitely believe that your vision has the potential to do that. And I think you've got an army of people around you that maybe you don't even know. People like myself, people like the other parts of the community who train and develop and educate. So what I want to ask you is, how can people like me, people like those people, anyone who might be watching this who's in that space, who believes in this, how can they contribute to helping you?
The first thing they need to do is get in touch. So the website is ed20.co.uk. All the social channels are ed20official. Except for Facebook, which is just ed20. The best thing is just to get in touch and see, because the amazing thing about this project is that everybody can contribute. No matter what your skill set is, no matter what you are passionate about, we need you. We need people. We need the community. And this school is all about the community. It's all about serving the needs of the community from day one. So we need, if you're passionate about change and you want to help make things better, then there is a place for you here. And we would love to hear from you. So first thing is just to get in touch, and then, yeah, I answer all the emails. So info@ed20.co.uk.
Amazing.
The one other thing that you were talking about, the technology and where this is going, and we've got an AI partner who are developing an assistant for each child, so that each child will come in, and from day one you have an AI. It's like an AI assistant that follows your education and tracks where you are and where your shortcomings are. So it's constant assessment. It's constantly looking at where you are, and it's letting the faculty know where each child is and where their shortcomings are and what needs to be addressed. And then it learns as you learn, and it learns more about you as you grow up, and it gives you exactly what you need. And that's the kind of game-changing approach we're taking. So that's why we're looking for technology partners, curriculum, assessment, pedagogical, and learning environment. Yeah, it's all systems go.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's the future of education, and it's not about evolving. It's about tearing down and innovating and changing the game, which is what we're about. So 100%, listen, I love it. I think it's amazing. I'll do whatever I can to support you, and let's change the world. Why not?
Thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's been great. It's been great. And thanks for catching up. All right, dude. I'll chat to you very soon. Keep well.
Take care.
Cheers, man.